The observation deck of the Celestial Academy hummed with nervous energy as 24 students from across the galaxy pressed against the reinforced viewing panels. Professor Zelnoth's crystalline form refracted the dim emergency lighting as he gestured toward the planet below, a desolate world designated only as Outpost 7. Today's lesson concerned survival. The professor's telepathic voice echoed in their minds. Below us roams a Thalrex, apex predator of the Vorath system. Note its designation in your datapads. A collective shiver ran through the students. Even the Kryn, whose species had conquered fear through genetic modification, felt their secondary hearts quicken. The Thalrex was legend-made flesh, 4 meters of corded muscle, armored hide that could deflect plasma fire, and sensory organs so acute it could detect a heartbeat from 3 kilometers away. Observe, Zelnoth continued, magnifying the surface view. The creature moved with terrifying grace across the rocky terrain, its 6 limbs carrying it in fluid bounds. Razor-sharp talons scored deep gouges in solid stone. Its triple-jawed maw opened briefly, revealing rows of teeth designed to shear through reinforced alloy. Then something changed. A figure emerged from behind a collapsed structure, bipedal, relatively small, covered in simple fabric rather than natural armor. The students' universal translators identified the species immediately. Homo sapiens. Human. By the first light, whispered Kessa, a Tenthari student whose bioluminescent patterns flickered with anxiety. That human is in direct line of sight. They're dead. The Thalrex had indeed noticed. Its massive head swiveled, triangulating, the human's position through sound, thermal signature, and bioelectric field. The predator's hunting stance was unmistakable. Weight distributed, muscles coiled, secondary claws extending from their sheaths. But the human didn't run. Aaron stood perfectly still, hands visible at his sides. His breathing remained steady despite every survival instinct surely screaming at him to flee. The students watched in horrified fascination as the Thalrex began its approach. Not the explosive charge of a final strike, but the measured advance of a creature that knew its prey had nowhere to go. 50 meters, 40, 30. Why isn't he moving? Demanded Vrix, a Colonian whose warrior culture prized tactical retreat. Does he not understand what faces him? Professor Zelnoth said nothing, his attention fixed on the scene below. At 20 meters, the Thalrex paused. Its sensory tendrils extended fully, sampling the air. Then, something unprecedented occurred. The apex predator took a step backward. Confusion rippled through the observation deck. Predators didn't retreat, especially not Thalrexes, who sat unchallenged at the top of their ecosystem's hierarchy. Aaron moved then, not away, but forward. A single step, deliberate, his eyes locked onto the creature's primary visual organs. The Thalrex's posture shifted, its armor plates, which moments before had been angled for attack, now pressed flat against its body, a defensive configuration. Another step backward, then another. Impossible, breathed Professor Zelnoth, his crystalline form brightening with excitement. The human is neither armed nor using technology. There's no chemical deterrent, no sonic disruptor. What could possibly— Look at its neural patterns, interrupted Kessa, her manipulator tentacles dancing across her datapad. The Thalrex isn't confused, it's afraid. The readings confirmed it. The predator's hormone levels showed markers for genuine fear, the same biochemical response smaller prey species exhibited in the presence of a Thalrex. Aaron took another step forward. He raised one hand slowly, palm outward. Not a weapon, not a threat display, just presence. The Thalrex made a sound the students had never heard in any of their xenobiology recordings, a low, almost plaintive keening. Then it turned and loped away, its gait just short of a panicked sprint. The galaxy's most feared predator retreated from an unarmed human. The observation deck erupted in chaos. Students shouted questions in a dozen languages. Datapads chimed with analysis algorithms failing to produce logical conclusions. Vrix pounded his fists against the viewing panel in frustration. Professor Zelnoth raised a limb for silence. Theories? Pheromones? suggested a Delphian student tentatively. Negative. Scanners detect no chemical agents. Psychic intimidation? Humans are not psionic. Kessa's pattern shifted to contemplative blue. Then perhaps it's something we're not equipped to measure. Not technology or biology, but something else entirely. On the surface, Aaron lowered his hand and walked calmly back toward the structure. His heart rate, the monitors showed, had barely elevated throughout the entire encounter. Humans call it presence, Professor Zelnoth said quietly. We've documented it across their history. Moments where a human exhibits such absolute confidence, such unwavering certainty of their place in the hierarchy, that even creatures with superior physical capabilities recognize something older, something deeper. Are you suggesting, Frick said slowly, that the Thalrex recognized humans as apex predators? No, the professor replied. I'm suggesting it recognized them as something that hunted apex predators. The students fell silent, processing this information. Humans, they'd learned, came from a death world, a planet so hostile that survival itself was an act of defiance. But they'd assumed this made humans tough, not terrifying. Consider, Zelnoth continued, that humans evolved hunting megafauna with primitive tools, that they climbed to dominance not through armor or venom or size, but through persistence, intelligence, and the unshakable conviction that everything else was prey. The Thalrex sensed what predators throughout Earth's history learned, that human is the species that never stops coming. Aaron disappeared into the structure and the Thalrex was nowhere to be seen. Professor Zelnoth dimmed his form, signaling the lesson's end. Remember this day, students. We share the galaxy with many species. Some are stronger, some are faster. Some have technology or abilities we can barely comprehend. But there is one species that scared away the galaxy's apex predator, with nothing but the memory of 10,000 generations of ancestors who looked at the impossible and simply refused to die. As the students filed out chattering nervously, Kessa paused at the viewing panel. Below, Aaron had emerged again, carrying salvage equipment, completely unconcerned with the monster that had fled from his path. Humans, she whispered to herself, her patterns flickering with newfound respect and a touch of primal fear. Humanity indeed.